Hello from Purple Valley Goa, and today's tutorial is on the jump through, jump back. So first of all, why would you want to do that in the first place? Well, it's more than a connective movement. Yes, you could say like it's a nice linking, it makes the whole thing flow, but it's more than that, and it's twofold. The reason is, one, scapular mobility, your shoulder blades. Moving this shoulder blade area, that's hugely beneficial in terms of how your body opens, and that I'd say 70% maybe could even be put down to this jumping movement. And along those lines, before I go any further, you don't have to do the whole thing, right? You can get the effectiveness of the movement by understanding the technique and applying that, regardless of whether you actually jump back, jump through, right? You can do something which will do the same thing without actually necessarily completing it, but why not try and see how far you get anyway? But the point is, do something there, because it's important, not only for your shoulder blade mobility, but also for your digestive area. And the digestive area is huge in our bodies, right? Now, all medicine, traditional medicine that is based on the fact of helping our digestive area, because the digestive area goes out of whack and it affects the rest of the body, really. So all indigenous medicines are really focused on, to a great extent, the digestion, food, how we eat, right? And we can eat as well as we want. If the digestion is no good, then the food will be meaningless in terms of how it's absorbed, just be excreted. So trying to kind of work on our digestive area is huge for yoga if it's a therapy, if it's used therapeutically, and the jump back, jump through is really the sine qua non, the very best thing that we can do to help our metabolism and our digestive areas. So those are two fundamental reasons, apart from just that it's a linking movement, a convenient linking movement, right? And that's why it's applied in the primary series and not so much elsewhere, because the primary series is the yoga conditioning, really. The yoga chikitsa, the yoga therapy it's called, and it's just basic body conditioning. So first of all, you can look at the two fundamental movements in the jump back, jump through, which is involved in the cat-cow. They're involved with their pronation and retraction. Retraction and pronation, right? And retraction is basically the first part of the jump back when you're pushing down through the shoulders, and pronation, the second part of the jump back when you're pushing through, right? So the same with the jump through, in fact, you're doing it in reverse, right? The jump through is a reverse of the jump back, so it's easy to find the mechanism there rather than doing the whole thing in the positive where you have to use gravity, you have to go against gravity, and first find it with gravity, right? So the jump through is where we will first start using this retraction pronation, and the mobilization of the shoulder blades is what you have in your mind in every posture. So yoga is a holism. That means that every posture is part of the sum up to that whole, right? It's not like you isolate the jump through and the jump back and you learn it from there. Everything you do involves this retraction pronation, and you can watch other videos where I talk about yoga breathing and how it does that to the body on a very subtle level in every asana. Anyway, a few tips for your jump back, jump through now. Now, as I said, let's start with the jump through, because it's a negative version of the jump back. So it's easy to do because you're doing it with gravity and not against, right? Go through a few things. First of all, you have to set up the hands wide enough to jump through. That seems obvious, but if you're a woman especially, you may need to put them wider because you have hips, right? So you need a wider stance hands. The second thing now we're looking at the hands is you need to pull, you're constantly pulling across with the hands, pulling apart. You imagine you connect your elbows together. So you've kind of got a laser at the elbows, connected elbows, and a frame, a firm frame that you're holding across with the middle finger facing forward. If you can, that middle finger facing forward will allow you the kind of right rotation, which is an internal at the elbows, internal rotation at the elbows, and slight outward at the shoulders. Out and back at the shoulders, internal at the elbows, right? And you made this frame, yeah? So the hands pulling across. Fundamental in the jump back and jump through. Strength across your body. Secondly, connect the feet. So this kind of motion of up and down when you're starting it is connecting the feet to your stomach, right? Connecting the feet to the stomach, because what you have to be able to do is pull the thigh right on the stomach to come through, or to jump back. So if you can't keep the thigh on the stomach and release the hands, that's a problem, because if the thigh will then just drop on the floor, right? So you have to have strong hip flexors to be able to keep and length around your back of your sacrum area and the thighs, to be able to keep the thigh on the chest for the jump through. And that's probably the most overlooked idea in this whole technique, that the legs have to really stay tight towards you, right? And to that end, the position of the legs can either be knees wide or knees close. Knees wide will allow the legs to draw in and the feet to come further up, and knees further down will allow the knees to come even further in, but the feet will be lower. So you have to choose your position there. I favour pointing toes to the sides. Finally, be optimistic and aim the chest forwards. You want to imagine a spotlight shining through your arms and forward of the hands. Forward of the hands. If you look down to the hands, you'll only land in the hands. You want to look forward of the hands, shining that spotlight forward from the chest, looking up to it and jump up to it. Yes, jump into it, sorry. And finally, when you prepare, you come over the fingertips first of all to ascertain your balance point. And the trouble is, the shoulder to jump through has to come over the fingertips. So this is a fundamental point to realise in the end. Shoulder has to come over the fingertip to jump through, the same as the jump back. So you're supporting your weight. You're supporting your weight. I feel it kind of feels like you're holding yourself underneath your armpits. If you get the right pulling across of your hands, it feels like you're holding yourself underneath your armpits. And then finally, when you jump up to the stomach with the thighs, there's only a minute when they're not on the stomach, right? They're not on the rib cage. So I'm here with the thighs on the stomach, and there's only a moment when I push into the legs that they come off the stomach, right? So most of the time I'm keeping my thighs on the stomach. And first of all, to build up to it, you can jump or step to this place if you're worried about jumping, step and just shuffle the feet through, keeping coming with the stomach engaged and the arms engaged, and then sit there, yeah? And it's a bit clunky, I know, but that's how you start to develop it. And if you've got a pair of socks and a slidey floor, you can slide the feet through with the socks on, and even though you're touching with the feet, you develop that movement to a great extent, right? But the point is, do something in the space. Do something in the space, because something is always more than nothing, yeah? And finally, we show you the fourth thing, but it happens so quickly. We've got the hands pulling apart, the middle finger forward. The bend and crouch, and the first coming forward to ascertain the place you're going to jump up to, which is there. And then you look. You have to look forward, right? You have to look to where you want to jump, which is in front of the hands. And then finally, the thighs stay on the stomach through the whole movement. They stay super glued to the rib cage. Inhale, jump up. I'm pulling my hands apart. Catch. And coming down, right? So there's no magic pill to this, although I've discussed the technique. Obviously, in the end, you have to practice it a little bit generally. And I want to share with you that the whole thing took me at least 5 years to master daily practice. Me as a young guy, I started when I was 19 or 20 as well. So you've got to recognize that some people's bodies do this more naturally than others, and for mine it wasn't a natural thing. It took time. Apparently there's 3 different shoulder blade positions, 3 different scapular positions that we might have, that you know, amongst different bodies, and I guess 1 or 2 of them are not conducive necessarily to the jump back. But do something, because it's important. And again, play with that protraction, pronation that I showed you at the start. That's really it, the ability to undulate from your shoulder blades, right? To have this looseness at the shoulder blades, yeah? And the final thing that I didn't mention for the jump through is that as much as you're jumping the feet to the hands, you're also putting the chest back to the feet. So you're coming together as much, not just jumping forward, yeah? So there's a pulling with the hands to pull the chest back to the legs as much as you're jumping the legs to the chest. You see what I mean? Feels like you're pulling the floor. Now let's briefly look at the jump back. And as I say, the same thing in reverse, so most of the instructions stay the same, apart from using momentum in a different way. You have to tip back as far as you can behind yourself, so you're always falling over, almost falling over, and holding the legs. This is how I learned it anyway, holding the legs on the chest. And now release the legs, but try and keep the legs on the chest. Then look at your hands. Can you drop the shoulders? Make sure you drop the shoulders and bend the elbows a bit. Now, if your arms are up here, you might need some blocks for a while. Bend but if you've got a bend in the elbows when you bend the arm, then all you need to do is hop over the feet. You don't need height. just imagine you're a globe tipping. So when the head goes, the feet follow, or sorry, when the feet go, the head follows, yeah? Like a globe tipping, no height needed. The other thing I think about is, imagine I'm holding a handlebars or a bicycle with my hands, and I tip over that. So I feel again like I'm holding myself underneath my armpit when my hand is on the floor, yeah? So I'm rolling, or I'm pulling through the hands, or rolling through the hands, rolling through my armpits, and the knee position again is wide for me, right? Not together. Together will bring the legs closer to the chest, but the feet will be further down, so you'll have more to jump over. If they're wider and the toes pointing to the sides, I feel that the feet are more out of the way, although you can't bring the legs into the chest quite so much. And then finally, look at the feet. So you have to keep your chin in and chase the feet with the eyes. You start really far back to give yourself a head start with momentum. Tip onto the hands, and then you've got, first of all, you've got depression of the shoulder blades, as I said, and then you've got pronation. So you've got two phases. That's why I showed you the cat-cow at the start. First of all, pushing down, and then like that. So if you get stuck and you do the toe tap, is that pushing the shoulder blades away that you've got to work on. Anyway, inhale, you tip forward, lifting the feet, and skip over the feet. Lift. So first of all, obviously, it happens so fast, you're trying to build metaphors and techniques in your mind, so you can slow the whole thing down, yeah? And that's why I broke it down into sections as well, yeah? The first is a lift, the second is a resist, as it were. So to work on your, well, first of all, let's slow it down and say, well, first of all, just rolling over the feet and holding more weight in the arms and the stomach is a good variation. Yeah, I know it's obvious, but it will build something. So you roll over, or you try and do it. Your feet get stuck, then shuffling them through, but trying to keep the hands roughly in the same place, not putting them all the way forward. You keep them roughly in the same place and shuffle them through, and then jump. That will build up more strength in the stomach than just rolling over the feet and using the feet. The more the hands are forward, the more weight's in your leg. The more your hands are back at this point, the more weight is borne in the stomach and the arms, and the less is just resting on the feet. Yeah? So when you get stuck, that's fine. Again, you could use the floor and the socks to slide through. But try not to put the hands too far forward, because you'll bear more weight in the feet, and you want to keep trying to bear the weight in the arms. And, as I was about to say, there's two movements here you need to work on. One is depression of the shoulder blades, and one is pushing away. So depression of the shoulder blades, you start to try the L sit. Have the hands, lift up and down. Depression of shoulder blades, lift up and down. And in the end, you can try and lift the feet all the way off the floor and down. Yeah, and when you can do that, I think you can lift up enough to jump through. There really isn't much height needed. That's the first phase. The second phase is basically working your Lolasana. And Lolasana involves that movement again. So coming into crossing the legs off the foot, crossing the legs behind you, looking down between the hands, putting the hands apart again, and pronating our shoulder blades so that there's a rounding of the back. Yep, you're not pulling the shoulder blades together, retracting them, you're pronating them. And then see if you can just lift up and balance there. Yep, and that's the second part of it. But the trouble is you have to do the movements in the air. You have to go from depression to this movement, protraction, in the air. Yeah, you have to do it in the air. And that's the tricky bit, because it happens so fast. But building up those two movements separately is really helpful, because you can gradually then link them together in one movement. So, finally, let's go through it again and again. If you're working at this, first work more on the jump through. And in getting the jump through and understanding the feeling in your body more on the jump through, that's the seed of the jump back coming. Because the jump back is a lot harder, admittedly. I feel everyone can get the jump through, but the jump back, I think some people will have to do a version of. And the full movement, you keep trying. It's not to say you won't do it, but nevertheless know that it is really hard and a unique movement in the body. But worth persevering at. Look at the feet, point the toes to the sides. Shoulder blades down, and the chin is tucked in. Now, I think I'm going to chase the feet with the eyes. I'm tipping back as far as I can, trying to keep my thighs super glued to my ribs. Holding myself underneath my armpits, depression of the shoulder blades lift, and then protraction to jump back. So, here are a few ideas that I've kind of utilized for that jump boost, jump back. And yes, just know that it really is worthwhile persevering, and it doesn't matter even if you can't do the whole thing or won't even do the whole thing. The point is that the movement is really effective.